When I heard about what we were doing, it's like, yeah, we're doing this coast-to-coast race called The Run. I was like, got it. No need to explain anymore. I just get it. Past Need for Speed games have typically taken place in a fictional city. So The Run actually takes place in the US, and it's a legal race from San Francisco to New York City, and we've never ever had that before. So there's definitely an epic quality to The Run. It's not a casual race, like I'll just take it easy. Every second counts. Audio really brings scenes to life. So you can have fantastic visuals, which we do, a fantastic art team, but then how do you bring that to life through sound? And so the feeling was really trying to nail the different geography that you're going to be traveling through. So the desert, for example, is going to sound different than the mountains, which is going to sound different than a busy city. In terms of sound effects, for The Run, we had to make things a lot more human. And to do that, we had to add more sound effects.
That's the guy! That's the guy! Get him! Get him!
In the past, we haven't had characters getting out of a car and running, even the dialogue as well.
You head around front. I'll cover the back. You got it.
We actually bring the sound team into the design meetings at the beginning when we're trying to think about what objectives do we want to accomplish with these trailers. It's so important to make sure those trailers come to life. The source files that they have for actually creating the cars in-game, and then what we use in our videos, it's a big deal because really the cars are the stars of the show. It's pretty amazing to hear what they actually sound like.
Each car is recorded on average between 8 to 12 mics just for onboard. And of course, you know, there's the exhaust.
95% of our effort goes into that last 10 to 20% of making it a believable experience.
We have such great audio engineers and fantastic sounds that really capture the power and the feel of the cars. If you've got a computer that can process that, you're going to get the full experience. And if you've got substandard equipment, the experience is still going to be fun, but it's not going to quite be what it could. In each of the main stops along the run, there's an epic blockbuster moment. The first big impact moment in Death from Above is you have this intense racing going on through the streets of Chicago, and then out of nowhere, you get T-boned by the mob. So bam, it's this metal on metal jarring experience that really sort of makes you stop and think, like, what the hell is going on here? And then his only course of action is to run up the stairs in the building. You've got these little beats of footsteps, and he's trying to jump this chasm from building to building, and all of a sudden this helicopter looms up out of nowhere, and you hear it, and it starts shooting, and it's like a holy crap moment. The bass of the helicopter and then the sound of the bullets hitting the rooftops is pretty stark. And then the next experience is that he has to get a cop car to be able to get out of the city alive. He's got to secure that car, and then the big action moment is when the chopper is firing on him. When you're driving that car and you first hear those bullets and hear those chopper blades whirring, it gets your heart rate pumping. Now, after you've eluded the helicopter, sort of, this gas tanker explodes in front of you. And then it's quiet. You know, there's small kind of orchestral sounds to set the tone, and then all of a sudden the camera zooms in and you hear this shrill train horn. It's amazing to see consumers play that, because at E3 that was the demo, and it's like their eyes were like, oh my gosh, I gotta get out of this car now. You're freaked out, you know, feeling relatively helpless inside that car. If you've got a great system and you've got a great sound system as well, then it just makes your gaming experience that much more enthralling and just rewarding.
It's exciting to figure out every year how to reinvent Need for Speed again, how to give it a new edge, how to give it a new sound, basically. A lot of inspiration really came from our consumers who kind of drive what we are expected to do. One really neat thing that we actually try to do then this year is, of course, make that car come alive, like to the extreme. Each car is recorded on an average between 8 to 12 mics just for onboard. Anything that makes a specific sound on the car, we'll try to record it. We'll place mics exactly near the intake. We'll place one near the firewall. We'll place one over the top of the engine. We'll place one near the turbo. We don't just place a mic there. It has to be the most specific mic that will capture that part or that element of the car as best as it can be. For example, if the car has side exhaust, and you would drive 100 miles an hour, you get nothing but wind. So we had to develop new ways to record the sound perfectly for all of those spots. Then we have 3 to 4 recorders on the side, when cars drive by at 100 miles an hour, 2 feet away from them, just to basically capture the perfect by sounds.
There we bring it in, we process it, so it's not a straight playback of the sound. It's actually cut up into fine grains, and there's a little bit more to it than that, but it's kind of secret. All right, so this is our engine and exhaust playing on their own. If you listen, you'll hear the oscillation between the transmission and the engine. This is the sound of our transmission. You hear that kind of thing on a straight cut gear, kind of one of our hyper real things that we do. This is our turbo. All the elements are kind of carved out to make room for each other spectrally. So you want to be able to hear everything. You don't want to hear a big pile of mush, right? So this is everything together.
We didn't end just by doing an engine. We didn't just end by doing some sputters and some turbos and some other stuff. We really wanted to make you feel like you were moving, like this car was in the space, like this car was traveling between all of this other stuff. Because we're using the Frostbite 2 engine, it enables pretty much anything that you could be doing on a Hollywood mix stage. We can stream anything, we can play anything, we can make it sound as big as we want, we can make it sound as small as we want, etc. Realism isn't always what people expect things to sound like. Because this game has a lot of explosions and crashes, I mean, you can of course just play a crash and play an explosion, but for us it's all about how do you experience as a player these crashing explosions. So yes, we did go out and recorded about 50 cars that were just being dropped from about 100 foot down. Okay, boring, honestly. So of course we have to take liberties to make it sound bigger, more exciting. But there's only so far you can go. We had to come up with some new ways in order to make these feel more hyped, more real, much more visceral. If something is so loud that your ears just shut down, how loud is that? Now, if an explosion would happen next to your ear, how intense do you feel this sound? So what we actually started to do at times is take stuff away, thereby making it sound even louder than it was before. The music in the run this year is very much tailored towards the story in the game. And the composed part of it, the film part of it, is all done by a guy by the name of Brian Tyler. And he's done a fantastic job so far on it. It really counteracts between these licensed songs that we have and their score. It no longer is just a pure separation. It definitely is a complete blend between the two. One of the things, of course, that we always want to do with Need for Speed is make it sound as big and bad as we can, and we always have to tailor it towards specific platforms, speaker systems, etc. Of course, this year, HP came out with a laptop that makes our game sound really, really cool and exciting. Actually, it really highlights the big explosions. It really highlights these, really big cars. Because usually on laptops, you kind of get these tinny sounding games. Not with this one. it should come across a lot more real, a lot more like you're there than ever before. I can't wait for everybody to hear it.
The sound design for previous Need for Speeds is very over the top, objects whooshing by and smacking into things. We still, of course, have those elements because it brings the excitement, but we've gone with a much more cinematic overall feel to the game. I came from Los Angeles, where I worked on a lot of films, and I've sort of tried to figure out how we can bring that feel to the game. One big aspect, of course, is the score. Brian's score really emphasizes the excitement and the power of racing and the adrenaline rush. Part of the more cinematic, serious, intimate feel of this game is more believable voices.
You head around front. I'll cover the back. You got it.
It's similar to previous games in that we have cops and some of the cop chatter that you're probably used to.
Units in the area, please respond.
What's different though is that we have a main character this year. You see his face, you hear his voice, and you can get out of the car. We get early sort of storyboards of what it's going to be like. We break down what we need from the actor. So we need an effort for this particular movement. We need a strain, we need a reach, we need this and that. When you put in the vocalizations, it sort of gives you that connection with Jack.
Having a character that has a voice in our game is a big leap for Need for Speed. The character's not an overwhelming presence in the game, but you're no longer just watching an empty car drive across the screen. That's allowed us to bring a lot more of dramatic, emotional elements to the sound of Need for Speed.
The whole thing is all about emotional and drama and keeping up the tension and the excitement and everything. So we don't want to keep it super literal. We try to use whatever sounds we can to drive the emotion. We're not necessarily looking to say, if he's running or punching, we need like a literal punch sound. This is just all our hits. So anything that's just just kind of a big impact. We might take a literal punch sound and we'll find some other sounds, maybe some explosions or some, car drops or some really low, like subwoofer kind of bangs, and we'll kind of layer them all up just to build up that emotion and that drama that we need.
Overriding through everything we do is how do we make this feel more human, more intimate. Just overall getting a lot of movement, a lot of believability behind who's driving that car.
We want to make you feel like there's an actual driver. When he hammers on the gas, there might be a little play between the transmission and the engine. So those pops are actually driving the visual effects from audio, which is something we've never done before. When he shifts hard, you're gonna hear it. Again, that same play, a little oscillation between the drivetrain and the engine. All those fine details are really what makes the engine come alive.
Our car here, for example, is not just, a recorded sound effect. It's made up of layers upon layers of sounds that are listening to physics and they're listening to the context of the game. Essentially, you're creating just the rules and the player's creating the mix, and it's different every time somebody plays the game.
I need a status update on that chopper now.
This is all the logic that goes into just playing this tire skid sounds. Each tire has its own physics information and what type of surface it's on. The sound gets processed and then sent out into the main mix of the game. This is just the skids. You can hear some of the reverb in the background. As you go faster, the skids change in quality, change in sound. If you're going 100 miles an hour sideways, it'll have a completely different sound. It's reacting in the way we feel a human would actually be applying the throttle and brake based on the inputs that the player is giving. It's so hard to get the actual feel of driving and not the feel of just controlling a car on the screen. That's where we really put the extra effort. A really nice system, really nice setup that just allows you to immerse yourself even more in the experience.
On Need for Speed The Run, there's story, there's race, there's intensity, there's anxiety, there's all sorts of things that you're supposed to do. So you start with the basics. You start with writing a theme. We want to have a really cinematic, big, epic score, but with like hip elements, and you need a lot of different types of music to support the action and the story.
We always try to have very, very cool and very edgy music in Need for Speed, but I think, over the past few years we've tried to really tailor the licensed music more to really fit the vibe and the overall feeling of that game specifically. In the case of The Run, you want to capture a feel of that American culture and driving across the country in America, and what would people that are doing this race, what would they be listening to? We listen to a lot of music, and I think the biggest part of it really comes from a gut feeling on that band and what it makes you feel when you hear their music.
The Run has a very specific kind of sound. The creative process is spurred on actually by looking at the game and playing it, especially with Need for Speed, the series. I'm a fan of the series. So the inspiration really, it's something that's pretty natural to me only because it's part of what I've been doing for years just as a player. You can have orchestra and that kind of thing playing, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. You need to have things like guitars like this. It all kind of fits together like this, and when you put all the instruments together, it sounds like this. There are enough sounds going on in Need for Speed to fill up the entire sound spectrum without even music. So you have crashes, you have sirens, you have all sorts of explosions. So what we try to do is find ways to carve out space so the music can actually be there to enhance the experience, the emotional experience. I'm able to listen to the car sounds even, like it's a V6. Why don't we do something with a bass guitar, because a V6 can allow a bass guitar riff. And whoa, no, this is more V12. I think maybe like a higher kind of guitar might work with some drums. Sometimes actually we think, you know what, it'd be better to just cut out music here for a while. We're constantly having to figure out ways to time and trigger the music to match the experience. Things are happening naturally, like you do something and then all of a sudden it's almost like the music knew you were going to. The music will be ratcheting it up, and then I'll go to some kind of slow motion sounding music when the player like leaps from one building to the next. I don't just kind of write a piece and say, here it is. It has to actually be a core of a piece, and then it goes into different areas, literally, where the player can go. The sound guys, they'll take my music in the different parts of the music, and then if a player does X, Y, or Z, all of a sudden it goes into this drum solo, and I hear myself just drumming. I'm surprised by the way that it's being utilized in really in original, creative ways by the entire audio team. You want to get that heartbeat racing. The key to that is making sure that you have the best sound you can. With things like Beats Audio, now it's crossed that threshold into, wow, you can have this cool racing experience really anywhere, if you have a huge setup or even a pared down one. Like any kind of motif-driven thematic score, the music will point towards something or point towards a character. Now, in this case, the music is speaking for the intensity of the player. So, in a sense, I am writing the theme specifically for whoever's playing the game. I have to get inside the head of the player, hopefully, and enhance the experience kind of from within. You need to be on the knife edge, on something like Need for Speed to really pull it off successfully.